to see you. I just wanted to make a quick live video while I had the chance. I learned something yesterday. I learned don't make a video or don't release a video on a holiday. I made this video. I thought it was really clever. I thought the thumbnail was really clever, although maybe the thumbnail and the title sucked. But I figured I'd put it out there. You know, it was on the idea of money and psychology, and I used this Pink Floyd album cover and what have you, and hardly anybody watched it. After a lot of people watched the video I made not so long ago, it was actually pretty cool that I got that many views. But apparently, you know, YouTube will tell you that the long-term performance of a video really doesn't depend upon when you release it. However, the YouTube algorithm will test it on a bunch of people, and if you pass that test, it'll keep going and going, and eventually it'll flatten out. You know this if you're a creator. And, well, I released it later in the day on Labor Day, which we have here in the United States, our one day to celebrate labor, you know, out of 365. And, well, you know, didn't get very many views at all, and so it finally flatlined in terms of how many people it was showing it to. So apparently that's not a good idea to do that. So I probably won't be doing that again. You know, you live and learn. You know, another thing that happened recently was I had somebody that decided to unsubscribe, which is fine because people unsubscribe all the time. No big deal. But it was somebody that had been a subscriber for some time, and, you know, they mentioned that they were unsubscribing because my format had changed and because the new format felt a little bit inauthentic, which was a bit surprising to me. And they talked about this idea that it seemed like almost like I was trying to set myself up as a guru, you know, and they weren't really into the self-help thing. And it was a very nice interchange. There was nothing wrong with the exchange between this former subscriber and I. That was fine. You know, that was really cool. However, you know, I had to think about this. You know, am I setting myself up to be a guru or not? You know, I certainly don't think so. Or, you know, but I hate, you know, if I'm coming across that way, let me know. It was funny, though. I had to think about it because, you know, I pivoted the channel quite a bit. I felt like I had said as much as I wanted to say about RPGs, although doing RPG a day quite recently was a blast. I really enjoyed doing that. But I felt like that I'd kind of, you know, unless I have something I really want to say about it, I didn't want to say any more about that. And, you know, after thinking long and hard about it, I didn't want to start another channel because I had some people here, not as many as you would think based upon the subscriber count. I think there's probably about a little less than 100 that watch regularly, and probably about, you know, I think it's like 500 or 700 that watch kind of, you know, regularly, and then there's a bunch of new people, which is cool. But the channel isn't as big as you might think it is at this point in terms of actual viewership. And, you know, so I thought long and hard, do I want to start another channel? And, you know, I decided not to. And that means I might alienate a few people, which I don't intend to. But, you know, I started to realize that, like, no matter what, I was going to be talking about what I wanted to talk about and what was on my mind at that time. So the content or the focus of the channel might flip in terms of what, you know, the particular subjects. Although, you know, I've always wanted to have a channel. I've always wanted to be very authentic and be very truth-seeking. But I was thinking about it, like, am I presenting myself as a guru? Well, you know, dogs are barking. They're mad at the other dogs in the neighborhood. And, you know, I've always been opinionated. 15 years ago when I started the channel, I was very opinionated on a certain topic within the RPG community. Very, very opinionated. And, you know, when I got clean, I quit making videos for almost 3 years, and I started making videos again, and I was still opinionated. A little kinder, a little gentler, a little less rough around the edges, let's say. And, but I was still opinionated. And over time, I learned to expand my thinking, and I talked to some other people. And so, you know, I broadened my perspective. However, even then, I've still been pretty opinionated. I've still, you know, held to my beliefs, you know, as they were expanding and growing. And while I've always wanted to challenge my beliefs and have that be part of the channel and a part of my life no matter what, you know, I noticed, I've always been kind of strong in my opinions. When I made videos about bass guitar gear and band management, I was highly opinionated because I wanted to give people my experience, not, you know, commercial experience, because there's lots of channels out there talking about bass guitar gear or about band management, or that's all they talk about. And it has to be very hyped up and very commercialized, and they have to review a lot of stuff in order to make the channel continue. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be the regular guy that was telling you, what is this piece of gear really like? What are my experiences with it? Or if you have a band, not like how do we have to stand and how do we have to market ourselves, but if you're going to go into a club, it's a business transaction. Here are the things you need to do in order to be a successful live local band, based upon my own experience. So it was highly opinionated. So when I started talking about things that have been on my mind, like the 9 to 5, seeing the system for what it was, and mental health type stuff, because a lot of the mental health stuff I've been talking about or thinking about is what I talked about in this last video, which didn't get very many views at all, is this idea that the majority of my anxiety now is all about money. And I fought anxiety and depression for years, but I'm in a really good place via medication and therapy and just becoming wiser about life and taking things into perspective. But money and the things surrounding it are still huge, and it's huge for everybody right now, except if you're really, really rich. And so, yeah, I'm opinionated about that kind of stuff too. I was just talking to my friend Jose, who's definitely a very right-wing capitalist type person. And I don't think capitalism is bad. I think all systems are bad. This was one of the better ones. But we're talking about the idea that capitalism needs some regulation because it will burn itself out. It's a video I want to make in the near future. But I said, yeah, that's one of those things. The regulation, it doesn't need to be a lot, but it needs to be done ethically and intelligently. And Jose starts laughing, and to paraphrase me, he said, well, man, you must be really stupid if you think people are capable of being intelligent and, being ethical, which was one of the funniest things I've heard all day. I had to agree with him. So that's pretty funny. But that's one of those things that, I have thought a lot about in terms of what's on my mind. It's not just, the economy or escaping the 9 to 5 or escaping the system. It's that, a lot of people are feeling that stress that's affecting a lot of people's mental health. And what a lot of people need isn't just the advice. What do you do in order to get your financial situation better? But it's like the hand-holding. It's, doing something against the grain, besides just being an employee, is difficult. It requires a lot of mental fortitude and a different mindset and doing things that are very uncomfortable. And you combine that with the anxiety that a lot of people already have, like, how am I going to make ends meet? And if I do something else, well, that's going to be another form of risk, at least a time risk or whatever. Is this going to pay off? And so it's I think the barriers to entry in terms of doing something different is higher than it has been in the past. At least that's my perspective, because people are just so freaked out and so anxious. And it's, when you have that kind of anxiety, when I did not so long ago, when I wasn't doing anything about it, it saps, like, you not have the will to live, although it might, but just have the energy to do anything else. You tolerate your job all day long, which saps your energy. And then you look at your financial situation, you're like, oh my God. And I'm thinking the best thing I can do right now is to go to sleep and maybe eat a pint of, a Haagen-Dazs ice cream, which is not good for the old gut. But you get the idea. And so that's I think a lot of people need reassurance and some guidance and some psychological tools to help manage this kind of stuff, as much as any kind of financial advice. And there's a lot of good financial advice out there. Channels like According to Nicole are phenomenal. Things like Gary's Economics are great if you want to look at the whole macro thing. But, in terms of what can you do about your life, things like According to Nicole, she's this really spunky, younger Canadian woman that has a lot of great financial advice based upon living in the trenches, not as an economist. And, and she's quite snarky too. So I enjoy the channel quite a bit. But that's a big thing. That's a big thing for a lot of people. And, once you wake up to the system, once you wake up to, like, how screwy things are, there's no blue pill to take. It can be a little freaky. You might want to think, well, I just don't want to deal with all this. And I don't know if more people are waking up, or if more people just feel a lot of pressure and they can't name it. What the hell is going on? And, that's where fearmongers, take over and say, okay, well, it's this group or it's that group. And, pointing you at different people in order to gain power. And that's another video in and of itself. But that puts us in a really bad situation. So, those are things that have been on my mind as far as that goes. And the thing, is to me right now is, getting, I believe all this is valuable information I'm talking about. And it's the thing, it's like, I'm not a marketer. I don't want to be a marketer. However, in order to get people to see or hear the valuable information, the information or perspective, or my perspective, then I need to make them actually click on the video. So the thumbnail and title have to be good enough to do it. And, there's two ways to think of that. There's the way where I need to market and I need to get lots of views so I can be really famous and make lots of money. Or there's also the mindset, which I've kind of like eased myself into, is just like, hey, like, just like everybody else, I have some real value. I have something to share with people. But unless you actually look at it, unless I get you to look at it, then, well, you're not going to get that. And unless I'm interesting enough or presenting things in a way that will have you continue watching, like I'm just not rambling and saying and and all the other shit that I tend to do, or just talking around in circles, because I'm not a linear thinker. I think kind of globally, and which is great for synthesis, not so great when you're trying to get your point across to people. So unless I change that, then people aren't going to watch. So it's about like getting the people to watch the entire thing, because they probably need to hear it. Some people need to hear it, maybe not everybody. Hey, what's going on, Cherokee? But somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to hear it. And so I want to make sure they actually hear it. And it's a little bit like, I was thinking about it. I got to make sure that I don't miss my dentist appointment here. It's a little bit like what we talk about in recovery. It's actually the 11th tradition, the idea that, the programs are based on attraction rather than promotion. I don't want to promote, hey, you need to watch Ivan Mike, 1968, because, this is what you need, because I'm a guru. I'm not a freaking guru, dude. Not even close. I'm just a regular person that's had some experience and has some perspectives. That's it. Maybe a little farther along than somebody else is. That's it, Instead of doing that, but it's the matter of like attraction. Like, hey, this might be a good video for me to watch. This might have something. And in order to get the message that I believe some people need into their hands, see, I'm repeating myself now. I'm doing the things I'm not supposed to do. Then, then they're not going to see it. So that's like a conundrum that I'm having to work at as I'm figuring out, how do I take YouTube more seriously than I used to, where I just pontificated about whatever I want. If I talked about role-playing games or some, bass guitar that I was hot on, I didn't give a rat's ass whether you watched or not. It was nice if you did. If you didn't, if you thought I was an idiot, who cares? And if you make a comment that my head resembles a potato or look like potato, that's great, because I think those are awesome. Those are some of my favorite comments, and my friends and I, there's actually a running joke about that, which I don't get into. And it's, let's see about this, blah, 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 yeah, that's the goal for me right now is to maximize my reach without disingenuous marketing. But man, right now, just people need a lot of help. People need a lot of help waking up, seeing what the hell's going on, and then help to not freak out, because I think we're in the middle of not just a financial crisis, but a mental health crisis. And capitalism is great, but unless it's regulated, it shoots itself in the foot. And people are so short-sighted, you, me, and the people with a butt ton of money, they're just thinking about the next quarter. And so they're transferring all the wealth to themselves, and they're, essentially destroying the economy, where eventually nobody's going to be able to buy anything, but it's just next quarter. And so we need to do something about that, not just systemically, like advocate for change, but we also need to do something for our own mental health so we don't freak out. And we need to do something for ourselves as an individual. And so lately, I'm doing this channel, but I'm also like, I need to start giving bass lessons. And I was absolutely afraid to do that, or felt I did not qualify to do that for the longest time, because I can't read. I just, there's a joke about bass players, not being able to read because they get gigs right away. I got a lot of gigs. I'm not a bad bass player. I know theory. I know why, I know how to teach people not only how to play it physically, but like why you're playing certain notes, why you're playing this chord here, all that kind of stuff. I just can't, connect the little black dots. And so that kept me from teaching. But there's a lot of people that, still could benefit from that, and I could make some money doing that. So, figuring out like how I can, advertise that, and get a couple clients, see how that goes, is on my agenda, because I believe that if you diversify your income, and I hate that term, if you've got more than one thing going on, you're better off, because man, I could get laid off from my job tomorrow. or I could lose my mind and quit and say, screw you guys, I'm going home. Because I hate that freaking job. But, I'm lucky to have it right now. Anyhow, what else was I going to say that I was going to do? Yeah, gigging is still going great. I'm earning a good amount of money for it. It's probably, is it 20% of my income? Maybe, something like that. So it's not insignificant. And it hasn't really grown this year, but I probably need to raise my prices at this point. That's another thing I've kind of learned is, you devalue yourself. It's so hard as a normal person that isn't used to like business to figure out that I need to have, put more value in myself. I'm charging people too little for doing sound. And so I'm starting to raise my prices now. And I was scared to do that because, well, okay, maybe less people will do it, or, get into it. But, I'm still cheap. But that's definitely a side hustle that's been working out really well for me. It is heavy. Will I be able to do it when I'm 70? Probably not, unless I buy really light gear, which is expensive, which, I'll probably end up doing. But it's kind of a, half passion, half side gig at this point. But I rented out a room in my house. I did not want to do that, but right now I'm at Susan's house, my girlfriend, and, we're going to have been going out for 3 years soon. And we very slowly, because of her kids and because of various situations, having to do with just being intelligent, this is the longest I've ever dated anybody without moving in or cohabitating. But we're getting to that point now. But, I've got a room in my house, another room in my house to rent out. I did not want to rent out my music room, the room where all my guitars were hanging, that I made a ton of videos in there. But it's like, it made sense to rent it to somebody. And I could not, in good faith, rent the house for the going rate or the room for the going rate. Because, they built some houses on my street. I see what they're renting the rooms for. It's outrageous. I can't do that to somebody. But I'm, I'm renting the room for a reasonable price. And it helps because, I just need the extra money. And, I need to rent out the other room so I can actually move in here full time. Because in order to pay my girlfriend enough to really live here, well, I need to have that extra part of income going in. So as uncomfortable as it is, I'm trying to have as many sources of income showing up as possible. What else am I going to do? I don't know. But, I can't spread myself too thin right now because, then I won't be able to give enough effort to any one of them. And I'm really enjoying doing this channel because I've always liked doing YouTube. And at this point, I feel like there's definitely messages I have that people need to hear or could benefit people. And I don't know how much I'm going to talk about recovery on this channel because, man, addiction crisis is getting out of hand as well. And once again, it's like you can't save people unless they need to be saved unless they want to be saved. But, the more places they get the message, the better. It's the truth. And a lot of times you just need to tell people, hey, you're not responsible for being an addict, but you are responsible for your recovery, so you need to stop lying to yourself. Or just give them a pep talk, because people need pep talks too, just like in every other aspect of life. So yeah, it's kind of like, where I'm at right now. I tell you, the housing crisis right now is bananas. And it's not because there's not houses, it's because, well, I can go into that in a different video, but the whole wealth disparity thing, I get offers almost every day to buy my house. My house, I think we bought it for like somewhere a little less than 2. It's worth 3 and change right now. And all the time people want to buy my house because I know they just want to like rent out the rooms for crazy amounts of money, like the house next to me. And there's part of me that wants to sell it because, wow, that'd be a lot of money, but I can't really do that to my daughter who lives there. And the other part is like, man, well, the regular people ought to own some assets too, because if we sell all of our shit to them, well, we're really fucking screwed. You get the idea. So I'm not sure what the hell I'm going to do with that. That's it, What the hell are you doing? That's the big question. It's not about me. I talk too much about myself. What are you doing to make ends meet and to survive? Because I don't know how people do it without a side hustle now. My girlfriend does this thing called Music Together. She's done that for years. It's her business. And she's a teacher. She makes decent money as a teacher, but still, she needs that extra cash. And, a lot of other people I know, like either they're working crazy hours at their businesses or working 2 jobs or working lots of overtime. And some of them have the side hustles. I know a guy that's worked in emergency rooms for years. And he's got a bunch of different side hustles. What are you doing to survive? What are you doing to make ends meet? Or are you looking to do something different? Are you taking the leap to do something different? And it's really cool now You don't need to take that huge risk you used to have to take with a brick and mortar business where you put all this freaking capital at, like your house, at risk. You can do stuff online now, and you can do like really crazy, stupid stuff online. But you can. There's so many people that are actually making decent livings, being ethical, just providing people with a service or something that they need. Where you don't have to. The bottom line is, or the point I'm trying to make is you're not putting a butt ton of money at risk. You're putting your time at risk. If you're putting your reputation. If like this channel never works out for me and I don't make a significant amount of money from it, or like partial money to be able to help me quit my job, would it, the worst that happens is some people that I have never met, see me fail. Big effing deal. Big freaking deal. It's not that big of a risk. But I'm curious what you're doing, or how's your mental health doing in terms of the economy, or in terms of the state of the world, because things are pretty crazy right now. I never wanted to talk about politics on the channel, but it's getting to the point where I kind of have to, because, and I don't want to do it that much, but, things are getting really, really crazy and out of hand. And I don't know about your country if you're not in the United States, and I should have made this video later on because, why would you live stream in the middle of the day when you're in the United States? Well, it's the time I had right now. Maybe it's like me making the video on Labor Day, or releasing the video on Labor Day, which was not a good idea. But I have people that watch in the UK and other time zones. So what the hell? You're important too. What the hell was I saying? But yeah, what are you doing? Because man, I don't know how your situation is in your country if you're not in the United States, but right now here it's wacky, and people are just freaking scared. And so no wonder there's mental health crisis on so many different levels right now. At least people are going out to see live music. They haven't really raised the rates that much. We're making crap for money as live musicians. But people are going out and doing that, which I'm glad for. Oh, hey, North Carolina. There you go, man. Awesome. I've been to North Carolina a few times. Interior during the summer, which I would not recommend. I think I've been in Charlotte in August. Oh. And on the coast, which was awesome. And it's all cool. I actually was born in Virginia. Never actually really lived there. But, it's a little wacky. And so people, people's mental health it's a weird time to be alive. But it's a good time to be alive. I'm glad people are watching live music. That's what I was talking about. Because before COVID, it was getting a little dicey. And then I think after COVID, people wanted to go out and do something. And then breweries opened up. And the hours were better. The breweries are nicer than the bars by far. I don't drink, but kids and dogs and families go there. It's pretty decent. That's really exciting to see that sort of thing. So, of course, it's always exciting to people play role-playing games. But I don't know. Would I want to go back and start? Would I want to start charging to run games? I did it for kids at the library during COVID. Yeah, maybe if it was the right group of people. So there's options. There's always more options than you think there are in terms of making extra cash or doing something different. Yeah, that's always a good point to remember. Because, just like I did right in front of you, like I will start to give you reasons or give myself reasons why I couldn't do that, why that wouldn't work out. Or did I, it doesn't have to be something that brings in thousands of dollars a month. But if it brought in a couple hundred and it didn't take that much of your time, how bad is that? How bad is that? Anyhow, kids, I got to go to the dentist. And so I can spend a lot of my money there. I'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot for watching. It's great to have you as the audience. Right, guys? And where'd the dogs go?